All right, so for today's read aloud, in typical Peter fashion, we've got a couple short, kind of choppy chapters just to kind of set up a couple different scenes. So we'll fit in maybe as many as 3 or 4 today, but they're pretty short. So chapter 36 is called The Second Bowl. Molly lay shivering in the grim darkness of her cell, listening to the endless drip, drip, drip of water in the tunnel outside. Apart from being cold, she was weak from hunger and aching from the effort she'd put into using the plank to pry the tunnel support. Over the past 2 days, she'd loosened it a good deal. She stopped when she felt that the next hard yank or two would bring down the post and, in turn, the overhead beam. She had set up her trap, and now she had to be patient to wait for the opportunity to use it as a means to escape. She prayed it would come soon before she was too weak to take advantage. She heard footsteps in the tunnel. She stood grunting with effort and peered through the bars into the yellowish light cast by the string of the electric bulbs. A guard was coming, carrying a bowl. Meanwhile, lukewarm brown slop, perhaps some moldy bread. She thought this might be breakfast. Or was it dinner? She'd lost track. Preparing to take the bowl, if she didn't grab it as it came through the slot, the guard allowed it to fall, dumping into the mud, and more than once, compelled by aching hunger, she'd eaten a meal with pebbles and sand crunching between her teeth. The tiny tin bowl pushed through, and Molly grabbed hold tightly. "Thank you," she whispered to the guard, desperate in her loneliness to engage in conversation with someone, even her captors. The guards, as always, ignored her. Talking was not permitted, and she watched him leave and was about to sit and eat her meager meal when she noticed something unusual. The guard turned and went down the hall. After delivering the food, the guard always went back the way he came, but this time he continued along the tunnel to her right. Molly pressed her face against the bars to follow his progress, and she caught a glimpse of something in the guard's hands. A second bowl. Now, if you remember what happened a few chapters ago in London, you might have a pretty good idea of who that second bowl might be going to, but Molly doesn't because she doesn't know what happened. She watched intently as the guard stopped about 30 feet down the hall. He turned toward the wall and pushed the bowl forward, and when his hands pulled back, the bowl was gone. The guard came back along the tunnel, passing Molly's cell, then disappeared around the corner. Molly sat on the floor, chewing the spongy slop, thinking about what she'd seen. Clearly, there was another cell, and clearly it was now occupied by a prisoner. Was it one of the workers who was being punished, or someone new to the tunnels? If so, who? She didn't dare shout out. That would only draw the guards. So she looked around the cell and found a rock. When she was a girl, her father taught her, among many other specialized skills, Morse code. She complained that it was boring, but he insisted you never know when something like this could be useful. Molly closed her eyes and searched her memory, recalling the dots and dashes that represented the letters. She raised the rock to the cell bars and began tapping. Hello. That's the end of the chapter. So we're back with our 4 mysterious visitors to Mollusk Island in chapter 37 called A Big Puff. Cheeky O'Neill worked the oars, keeping the lifeboat steady as it rode a wave onto Mollusk Island. As the wave broke and surged onto the moonlit beach, McPherson, DeWolf, and Kelly jumped out and heaved, skidding the lifeboat up onto the sand. With O'Neill's help, they quickly hauled the boat into the jungle and covered it with palm fronds. DeWolf reached to the beach and swept the sand smooth, eliminating any trace of their arrival. They were thirsty, hungry, and tired, but O'Neill would not let them rest. He grabbed some low-hanging bananas from a tree at the edge of the jungle and tossed a few to each man. "We're going to eat on the move," he said. They plunged straight into the thick, near pitch-black jungle, hoping to run across a path. The going was difficult. They had to fight for each step through the dense tangle of branches, leaves, and vines. Finally, after being exhausted for an hour, they reached a moonlit footpath. DeWolf sprawled on the ground, panting. "Get up," said O'Neill. "I need a rest," said DeWolf. "There's no time." "Why not?" said McPherson defiantly as he and Kelly dropped to the path too. O'Neill glared down at the 3 mutinous men. "I'll tell you why not. The ship was expecting the signal yesterday at sunset. We weren't here to give it. They're going to think we're captured or dead, and maybe they'll turn around and leave us. Or maybe they'll come looking for the star stuff themselves. Either way, it's trouble. If they leave, we're stuck here, and sooner or later those natives are going to find us. And this time, they'll kill us for sure. Or, if the ship sends men for the star stuff, not knowing the island, they're going to be spotted and there will be a fight. And I, for one, do not want to fight these natives on their island. O'Neill stepped forward, leaning over the three men. So those are the choices. We keep moving, or we send a signal. Or we die. Grumbling, the three men rose to their feet. How do we know they'll see the signal? Oh, we're going to make sure it's a big one, said O'Neill. A big puff, said Kelly. A very big puff, said O'Neill. And again, end of the chapter, a short one. So we're getting little bits and pieces of who the four strangers are. We know that there's a ship waiting for a signal, but we don't know anything more about who might be on the ship or what is to come, and that's on purpose by the authors. They want to keep you in suspense. Chapter 38 is called Good News and Bad, and it's only 2.5 pages. At dawn, a steward aboard the Lucy found Peter and Wendy dozing in the deck chairs. Although they were both tired from their ordeal on the pirate ship, and in Peter's case from flying across the steamer, the chilly sea air had prevented them from getting much sleep. Peter had nearly jumped over the ship and been forced to descend too fast. They had landed clumsily, falling forward onto the deck, and Tinkerbell had found this really funny. Peter and Wendy did not. After determining that neither of them had been badly hurt, they decided to simply stay where they were and wait to be discovered. When the steward approached, Peter quickly tucked a complaining Tinkerbell into his shirt. He and Wendy made no effort to run away, as there was nowhere to go. The steward, realizing that the two disheveled children were not paying passengers, took them directly to Captain Hart's cabin. The captain was unhappy about being woken up so early in the morning, and much more unhappy to learn that he had two stowaways aboard. When he saw that it was Peter and Wendy, he frowned, suddenly remembering the passenger's story who claimed to see a pink-sailed ship and two children fly onto the Lucy. Could it be? Nonsense, he said. The passengers had been seeing things, and children did not fly, but then how had these two gotten aboard, and where had they been hiding? For the next half hour, an increasingly frustrated Captain Hart tried to get information from Peter and Wendy, any information. But they refused to tell him anything, not even their names, having agreed to reveal as little as possible for fear that word of their mission would somehow reach the others. Finally, Captain Hart gave up. He summoned 2 large crewmen and ordered that the children be locked up in the brig. "You'll stay there until we get to London, and after that the police can deal with you both." Peter and Wendy looked at each other. The captain had given them good news and bad. The ship would be taking them to London. That was a lucky break indeed, but they could not allow themselves to fall into the hands of the police. And as the crewmen herded them below decks, Wendy leaned close to Peter and whispered, "We can't trust the police." "I know," whispered Peter. "We'll have to escape." "How?" "Don't worry," said Peter. Wendy looked doubtful. Peter didn't blame her. From inside his shirt came the soft sound of muffled bells. "You know, you can just fly away," said Tinkerbell. "What did she say?" said Wendy. "She said we'll think of something," said Peter. And that's the end of the chapter. So our next reading will be back with O'Neill and his big puff of smoke. But this is kind of typical for the book, where they just are filling in some holes, setting up for some big scenes to come. So we're a little bit more than halfway through, meaning that all the kind of big reveals and action should come at the end. Remember, as we read, you want to be thinking about how does this book stack up to the first 3 that we read? Where does it fall in your rankings so far? And why? Are there things that you like better about it? Are there things that you don't like as much? And I think for all of us, we'll probably have a little bit of both for our answers. All right, till next time.